Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Carrick and it's lovely to have you join me. What do you think thriving means? What does thriving mean to you in the way we live our life? My guest today is Debbie Harris from Deb's World, and we're going to be talking about thriving because that's the word of the year that she has chosen for 2024. Debbie is a vibrant, young at heart, 63-year-old, and among other things, a wife, mother, and proud granny. With a passion for sharing insight, she's an avid blogger who embraces the joys of life through her love of cycling, community involvement, and active participation in Rotary. A former teacher, Debbie remains an enthusiastic reader, embodying a perfect blend of wisdom and fun in her active lifestyle. She is aiming to thrive during 2024, and we're going to hear her ideas and perhaps take some of them on board so that we can thrive as well. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Debbie. It's lovely to have you join me on the Women Living Well After 50 podcast, and this is your second time that you've been my guest, so welcome again.
Oh, thank you. So I think it's either second or third time, actually.
Oh, could be. No, we did two more. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right in the beginning and in season 1 and then in one of the later seasons. And, of course, I'm up to season 7 now, so I'm getting a bit confused as to how many there have been.
Yeah.
So
doing well.
Yeah. So anyway, look, it's lovely to have you. And what we want to talk about today, like at the beginning of the year, there's a flurry, especially with bloggers, about word of the year. And it starts up about November at the end of the previous year. And people are sort of saying, oh, are you going to do a word of the year? Or I'm not sure I will. And then January is like the big reveal. And my word of the year is actually freedom. But your word of the year is thrive. And I actually had that a few years ago, and it's great because I had a certain take on that, and I'm interested to see what your take on thriving, in life is all about, because I think that we can talk a little bit outside the box instead of just the normal run-of-the-mill thriving that everyone knows about. So how did you choose your word of the year, and what drew you to thriving and thrive?
I had a few, as most bloggers seem to, I had a few suggestions in my list, and grow and flourish or prosper was a couple of them. And then I also had thriving. And then I then did a chat GPT question just to say, I am a grandmother, ride a bike, like to blog. What would be a good word of the year for me? And it came back and it said that thriving would be a very accurate word to describe me going into 2024. So I thought, okay, I'll stick with that one. So, yeah.
Yes, because I want you to also share what your word of the year for last year was.
What was my word of the year for last year? Was I exploring last year? Yes.
You were exploring last year.
Had to stop and think.
Yeah. And, that was all about exploring who you are in certain ways, as well as, exploring through travel and everything else. And then when you said that thrive was your word for this year, I thought that was a great transition from exploring, learning about who you are, and now thriving with some of the things that you started last year. And also,
I think that was probably at the bottom of it as well, that I thought, well, it sort of did flow on quite well. So I've explored, now I'm getting there and thriving. Yeah. So yes.
Yes, yeah. So, in terms of the word thriving, what does that mean to you? Because everyone's got a different slant on it. So I know you've written a couple of blog posts so far about it, but I'd like to just chat to you about what you think thriving means for you.
Well, to me, it's the words in the dictionary say things like to flourish, to progress, to prosper, and they seem to fit. But then also, I think for me, looking at the positive opportunities that come up, and then taking those and thriving through those. I didn't want a negative word. I also wanted an active doing verb, which thrive is. Um, so it's looking at the possibilities, the opportunities that come up. How can I make them work for my life and run with it that way? So it covers a whole lot of areas that I'll probably unravel during the year. That makes
Because it
sense?
can cover every avenue of our life, really. And
Mm,
thriving, I think, the obvious things, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling
yeah.
vital, you've got that energy to live life and enjoy life. And I also think it's thriving is when you can be feeling comfortable with the person who you are.
That's right. But
And
also
you
taking the positives and not dwelling on the negatives, which is
that's
um,
right. That's
something that we
right.
do as we age, that we sometimes fall back on those negatives and the self-talk and the whole, but no, I'm going to, go upwards rather than middle down here. Mm.
Yes, and it's striving to just live the best life you can. And I
Yeah,
know that's a bit of a cliche, but we want to make the most of this time of life because we really have lots of opportunity. We've got time, more time
yeah,
because we're not working, or definitely not working full time.
yeah.
And so we've got that extra time that we can devote to ourselves and really start to think about what makes us thrive, what's going to bring us joy, what's going to fill us up and fill our cup and make us feel vital.
Mm.
So, how do you think you're going to implement that into your life? Have you started off, like January's gone, so
Yeah.
how did you feel in retrospect about that? Have you started the year where you thought, oh yes, I'm getting into the groove of this thriving, or am I just taking it a little bit slowly out of the blocks?
Yeah, I think was taking it a bit slowly out of the blocks. We had a very busy January with family visits and um, things going on. It was a very busy month, but things like was our 44th wedding anniversary. So in that way, we've managed to thrive our way through all of those years. So I had to count that. My husband's birthday was in January. Um, the grandchildren are starting school. So I'm looking at everybody, not just me, but everyone around
Mm,
me, how they're
mm,
thriving. So I think January just sort of let me get settled. February, I have the studio that I go to, the exercise studio, is having a Fear 6. It's a 6-week transformational sort of program. So
mm-hmm,
I've signed up to join that. So that's looking at um, scans of vital body organs just to see how much um, fats are held around vital organs, things that us older women tend to need to know. Looking at
mm,
the fitness training that we can be doing, how it can improve things, not necessarily weight or measurements, but that improving self-confidence, mental health issues, all of those sorts of things. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that for the 6 weeks during February. So I thought, well,
mm,
that's a good way of, and then that sort of shows that I am progressing and my exercise goals are being met, and I'm pushing
mm.
myself out there a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, and I think you do have to start with the baseline because to me, unless you're physically healthy, it's very difficult to thrive. If you
Mm.
don't have that energy the energy levels and you're eating well. And, I'm not saying that you have to be running marathons. I'm not saying that you have to be eating lettuce leaves. But, if your general overall health is
mm,
good, then that's a great basis for a springboard for you to be able to thrive, don't you think?
yeah, yeah. And that's how I saw it. I thought, well, this is an opportunity that's come my way. I'm really enjoying the studio and the support and encouragement as an older member that I'm getting from everybody, especially my personal trainer. So I thought, well, this is one way of pushing through some of those barriers that I place on myself. Not no
Mm,
one else does, but I do, and to see if I can improve certain things. And I really enjoy that aspect of, and I see that as a thriving activity, well and truly. Yeah,
mm. And the mindset can be a great blocker, can't it? Because
yeah,
we've got these limiting beliefs as we know them, and we're good at probably telling ourselves we can't do things.
yeah,
We're our own worst enemies there. Other people might be saying, wow, look at you go, Deb, and look
yeah,
at you
yeah,
doing this, and you can't we don't see that within ourselves, and so we do tend to put restrictions on, and then
mm,
that stops us from thriving and living our best life because we're not developing ourselves to the best of
no,
our ability and to our full potential.
that's right. And we're holding ourselves back. So, and it's up to me to make my life go the way I want it to go. So yeah, take opportunities, push myself out there a little bit, um, and do some good to my body and my self confidence. I think
Mm,
will
mm. And
benefit. Yeah,
also, as you said, the mental health,
yeah, yeah,
because your mental well-being when you exercise and when you're feeling good physically, that's good for you mentally as well, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I'm not a um I'm not a fan of, measurements and weigh-ins and all of
No.
that sort of thing. And this doesn't have a lot of that in it. So I'm really quite looking forward to seeing what they offer and what they
Mm,
suggest
mm.
next week. So
Well,
yeah,
I think that trend, is becoming more popular. In the past, it used to be, the weigh-ins, the measurements, the all of that, which, like if you, it's not a good indication of where you are really,
no,
because perhaps measurements. I mean, but for me, if I'm looking at how my body is, or if I'm, on a health kick or something, you put your clothes on and you can tell if they're a
yeah,
little bit looser. You don't need to do your measurements
right,
there. And the other thing is, if you are exercising and becoming fitter, your muscle mass is going to increase.
yeah,
So it's no good getting on the scales and thinking, oh, I've put on weight, because it might just be the muscle mass and your
yeah,
body firming up
that's
rather
right.
than and you're dropping down the fat. So I think that the thinking now, moving away from the focus on those things, is
Mm,
so important, because it's so disheartening. When you've tried all week, I remember people who used to go to Weight Watchers or something that have to weigh in, and they might have been really good all week and not lost anything.
nothing.
And that doesn't mean that they weren't progressing. It's just the way
Yeah,
it
and I think
was. So,
I think it's progression too, isn't it? It's
yes.
not doing it perfectly or whatever, but it's at least progression and going in the right direction. So, and I
Yeah.
have been told that, that I am recognized as being an older woman in the exercise studio, but people love to see that I'm there and I'm
Yes.
working out, and I am increasing what I do, and I think that's really good for me to know that I am having an impact on others without really knowing that I am. So
Mm, mm.
yeah.
Well, that's right. You are becoming a role model to them,
Mm,
because they'll
mm,
go, gee, you
mm,
know, um, and I don't want to get into the ageist bit or
right.
that sort of thing, but we're in our 60s, and
Yeah,
I would say that both you and I are pretty active
yeah,
people. And I love that, because then others will comment and go, wow, that's so good. And they might only be in their 20s or 30s, but then they can aspire
yeah,
to be
yeah,
like us when they get to our age in our 60s. So,
But
it's
leading a good leading by example, really, isn't it? So,
that's right, and not just for them, but for your
no,
family as well.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
your children and your grandchildren, because you're leading by example.
yeah,
So that sounds like a really good way to start your
yeah,
thriving.
yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit out of the box, and I want to talk about the handbags.
All right. Yes, yes. The hand.
Because I was thinking when you wrote it, I thought, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. But it's amazing. What I love about people is, their creativity and how we all see things differently. And so you took a different spin on Thrive
Yeah.
with handbags. So I'd love you to share that with us.
So I think I like order, and so I need order in my daily life. So in my daily life, I exercise. I have a book. I'm in 2 book clubs. Um, I go to aqua aerobics twice a week when I can make it. So I have my pool bag. I have my book club bag. I have my um the pool one, the gym bag, sitting there ready so that when I have to get up and go, I know just to grab that bag, everything's in there that I need, and off I go. So that helps me feel organized and ready for action. Instead of rooting around everywhere looking for things to go into the bag, I'm just organized, got it all compartmentalized or whatever, and I just pick up that bag and off I go. So that's really, and I thought, well, looking at all the different types of bags that I had, the shopping bags, the everyday bags, the going out bags, I thought, oh, because if my bags are thriving, that means that I'm thriving because I'm the one doing all those activities. So
Yes.
it was a bit of a tongue in cheek sort of, roundabout way of saying, well, actually, I am thriving because I'm doing all of these things and I'm ready for them at any moment just to pick up and go. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that I thought that was very creative, and also, apart from the fact that it shows you that you're doing all this activity that we probably don't even think about, we just get in and do
yeah,
things that we
yeah.
want to do or whatever, and it's only when you stop and reflect on what you do and you think, wow, I'm fitting a lot in my day. But
Mm.
also the other side of the coin with the being organized,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
again, how can you thrive if you're living in clutter,
yeah.
if your mind isn't organized, or if your life isn't organized? And I'm not saying you have to be like a robot or military style, but if we've got clutter, whether it be mental clutter or physical clutter, you know what it's like with
Yeah.
plants. They're not going to bloom if you've got weeds and everything around them. You need to clear it all out so that the flowers can bloom.
And these bags aren't anything special. They're old, shopping bags or canvas bags that I picked up somewhere, or totes that mean something to me. And instead of them just lying around being unused, I'm sort of recycling all these bags as well. And my Rotary president bag is a really big one because everything that I have to do with Rotary goes into that bag. And then when I get ready for a meeting, everything's there ready for me and off I go. So it really does help to keep everything. And I've got a book bag sitting on my desktop with my journals and my diaries and all of those. So I like just to keep it all, a bit
Yeah.
organized. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now, what I want to do is talk about the flip side and think about the things that perhaps stop us from thriving. So, what do you think, even personally or generally, what do you think can impede us from thriving and really living a healthy and happy
Um,
lifestyle?
Probably negative self-talk. I think that's a big one, that we sort of say we can't do it, or we're too old, or we're, whatever. We can't do something. Um, the expectations that we place on ourselves can sometimes deter us from even giving something a go, that we just think it's probably not for me, but I won't even try, that sort of thing. And just staying in your own little world. If you don't break out sometimes, you don't know what else is out there. So you've got to be curious and question things and go looking for things. I think
Yeah.
that's what you need. You don't need to be staying in your own little world all the time and staying isolated. Yeah.
No, because it's very comfortable in our comfort zone, but
Yeah.
we can miss out on a lot of joy in
Mm,
life. And there's a lot of things on offer in this world and in this life, and we only have one life to live. So we have to really be quite open-minded and not shut
yeah,
ourselves off
that's
from
right.
opportunity.
Mm,
And I want to talk about, well, the negative self-talk we've mentioned a couple of
mm,
times with the limiting beliefs and
yeah.
and thinking, who do you think you are that
Yeah.
you can do this sort of
Yeah.
thing. But I also want to talk about the high expectations we place on ourselves, because we don't seem to place that on other people. We seem to forgive them, or we seem to allow them a bit more leeway than we allow ourselves. So why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's an age thing, though, that as we get older, we either get harder on ourselves or we expect too much of ourselves. But then also we start to realize that, hey, it's okay to fail sometimes, not to reach the potential that we thought we may have. So it's that finding that middle ground, isn't it? That
Mm.
um, we want to push ourselves out there, but we don't want to fail. But then we realize that we are only human and no one's perfect. So
No, that's right. And I wrote about that
mm,
last month, about the freedom to fail.
yeah,
And because there's so many positives you can take out of that
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
You may not be able to do something straight away, but if you learn from
yeah,
those mistakes or failures
mm,
and then go back and give it another go, you're going to eventually improve if it's what you want to do. I think the other thing is that we tend to get bogged down in doing things that we feel we should be
should
doing,
be, yeah,
rather than having, and sometimes that doesn't fill us with joy. We just sort of, and then that bogs us down. Whereas if we try to let go of those sort of things and get a bit more joy into our
mm.
life and do things that we enjoy, then we're going to be thriving. We're going to be
and
blooming and
that
flourishing.
and that curiosity too, that we don't know everything. We never will know everything, but if we keep our minds open to new ideas, then that curiosity, that questioning, can really help us, especially as we age. I think we're getting better at some of those things as we get older. It's just a shame that it takes us that long to
That's
finally get
right. That's right. But I
yeah.
think the other thing is that, and I've said it before in other episodes, we are the ones that are actually leading the way with this, because
Mm,
previous generations wouldn't have thought about it, or they didn't do anything, whereas we are a lot more reflective of
yeah,
of who we are, a bit more self-aware, and we're trying to get that out to everyone so that they don't have to waste all those years
yeah,
that,
I know.
I'm not saying our lives are wasted, but I know that I would have been much happier if I wasn't so self-conscious for all those years, and until I turned 50 and had a bit of a through change. But
Mm,
it just does help others.
mm,
Again, we're trying to be role models to
mm,
help other women to live their best that they can.
yeah,
Now, I
yeah.
also want to talk about regret,
Mm, mm,
because um, I think you were saying that there's the negative self-talk, we stay in our comfort zone, we've got the high expectations on ourselves, but a lot of us also have that sort of, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda
mm, mm,
attitude, and I wish I'd done this, or I wish I'd taken that path,
mm,
and we tend to stay back in the past too
mm.
much, rather than just being in the present and accepting that you can't change the past. So
That's right.
I think
Yeah.
I think regret is one of those things that will stop us from
Mm.
thriving.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And there's as we go through our life at any stage, there's different paths that we could have taken. And you either move on and just make the most of that. You can't go back, as you say, you can't go back and change it. There's no sliding doors movie moment that we can go back and undo things. So yes, it's good to reflect on what paths we've taken. And I think we were involved in a blog link up recently where we talked about the road less traveled or the road not taken. And it was really interesting to read all the posts from these lovely midlife women about what they have done, what path they've taken, and how they've made that work for them during those years. So yeah, regret is a big one, but it's no use living with those
with the
regrets.
regret. No, that's right. But I'd love you to actually share, and we're going off the thrive part a little bit here, but I'd love you to share your story about, the road that you travelled, but perhaps later than what other people might
Yeah.
have done it.
Yeah, so I was married at 19, um, and was going to wanted to be a teacher all along, but ended up having 3 children by the time I was 28. Um, was very happy being a wife and mother and doing lots of voluntary work, bringing up the girls, being a nursing mother's breastfeeding counsellor, all of those sorts of things. And then I got the opportunity, and when I was about 30, in my late 30s, a friend who worked in an education department in a jail saw me and said, look, I really think that you have something that we could benefit from. Would you like to come and work in our area? And you know how you think, what does she see in me that makes her think that? So I thought, well, yes, okay. And so I went and instead of being a checkout chick for the next couple of years, I went and worked in this education centre in a jail. And to progress further in that area, it came in that you needed to have qualifications. So I ended up doing a adult education course by distance when I was about 40, and my 3 daughters and my husband supported me through that while I was working 2 part-time jobs, the family situation, and I graduated with my degrees, and then went on for another couple of years in that role as an educator. So I did get to become a teacher. I just took a road that wasn't the way that most people would have got there. So
Yeah, a little bit of a windy
yeah,
road, but you
and I
got to
don't
the same
regret.
point.
No, and
No.
I don't regret any of those choices along the way. It was really good for my daughters as teenagers to see me having to work to a timetable. They wouldn't let me out of the study if I hadn't finished my assignment, and so that was being a good role model to them too. And then 2 of them were able to come to my graduation, which was a really
Mm.
lovely occasion. So yeah, I'm very proud of having achieved that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes back to having the open mind to accept an opportunity that comes along. You could have just said, "Oh, no, I don't think I can do
Yeah.
that," but you gave it a go. And
Yeah.
I think it's always good to say, "Well, what's the worst that can happen?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Um, that's right. A lot of people in town sort of said to my husband, do you want your wife working in a jail?" He said, "It's not up to me. It's her life."
mm,
And so off we went. So yeah, taking hold of those opportunities was very important. Yeah.
and having that supportive family
Yeah.
and your husband, and that's probably why you've just celebrated your 44th
Yeah.
wedding
True.
anniversary, because you've got that lovely supportive relationship with both of you there. Because I think there was a time he went to the UK and you packed up the girls and went with him
Yeah.
in a teaching exchange.
Yeah. So that was a very brave move by us. And I sometimes look back and think, my gosh, what were we thinking? But it was one of the best things as a family that we could have ever done. Yeah. Mm.
Mm, mm. So let's talk about some tips that you could give on those of us that, well, we've got into a little bit of a doldrum, or we're just not really 100% happy with the way life's going at the moment, and we're not flourishing or thriving. So where do you think's the best place to start?
Um, Probably to look at making it fun. Whenever I have a word of the year, I try and import some fun into it. So little things like I make up a Spotify playlist of songs that say thrive to me, whether they've got thrive in the title or the words or whatever, or songs that make me feel positive. So I add a playlist together. Um, I this year I've decided to do a reading challenge, so I'm making new opportunities to read in different genres, so that I'm not once again staying in that comfort zone. Um, and to talk to other people and read what other people are doing too, and stay in touch with what others are thinking and doing. The monthly reflection, there's a couple of good questions every month that we can ask ourselves. How did I go? What can I do better to make my word work for me? I think the monthly catch-ups that we do help me keep my word front and center. And some months you're just not feeling it, that's fine. Other months you're right into it. And that curiosity, that spark, just keep interested rather than getting yourself too bogged down. Just try different things and see what works for you.
And I think that's the thing, because it's not one size fits all.
No, no,
Everybody has, we're all individuals and different things work for others. So what might work for you mightn't work for me. But
yeah,
I think it's a matter of sort of becoming more self-aware of what your needs are and how you want to move forward in life, because you never know what's going to happen. I
no,
mean, and I do think that, like anything can happen in life. And I'm not talking about, you could get sick, your marriage could break down, you could lose a loved one, you could lose your life, sort of thing.
mm,
So
mm,
you never know what's going to happen. And I think it's incumbent upon ourselves to make the most of what we can, but
yeah,
also try to be as independent in
mm,
our own happiness
mm,
rather than looking to others to make us feel happy or to bring the joy to our life. I think it's up to us to do it for ourselves.
yeah. And as we are in this midlife age, sometimes we do have a lot of time, and a lot of people get bored because they've got so much time, or they have too many things to do and they run out of time. So it's either just seems sometimes it's either one way or the other. Um,
Mm,
but if you can keep your mind active and your body active, that's part of it. You've beaten some of that, and
mm,
we are
mm,
lucky that we do have time. I look at some of my daughters and the young mothers around, and I think, oh, they're in that real rat race,
mm,
and I
mm,
thought, yeah, we were there once, but
mm.
life's taken a different direction now.
That's
So
right. And, we talk about balance, and it is all about trying to balance it out. But to me, I don't think there's such a thing as work-life balance with some of the
no,
jobs and careers that especially women have today, because there's a pressure on them to stay in their career and have children, but don't be away too long from the career,
mm,
because it's too hard to get back, and a
yeah,
lot of times they've worked hard to get to that point. So
yeah,
that sometimes is a bit, I think it irks them a little bit to hear that, oh, you've got to find a bit more balance,
yeah,
because, but
yeah,
for like people like us who have passed all of that, we can find that happy medium in doing and being. So
mm, mm,
I think it's important, as you say, to get that balance there.
mm, mm,
So we're coming towards the end of our conversation, and I always love having a chat to you. And I always feel inspired after we've had a chat.
mm.
So I just wondered if there was anything else that you wanted to impart, any wisdom towards us before I ask you the one question I ask everyone.
Well, I think when you have a word of the year, sometimes you can get too bogged into that word. So last month, for instance, I had the letters of Thrive, the THRIV. So I made a little um, thing. So the T was think before you act, little things to remind me, not necessarily about the word thrive itself, but things that I need to be doing in my life. So think before you act, humor helps. So I always think that having a bit of a laugh can help. Reflect on choices, which is what we were going back to. That reflect, yes, it's good to reflect, but you can't regret them or go back and change them. Be intrepid. I like the word intrepid, as an adventurer and an explorer. Value the little things. I really think that blogging especially has opened my mind to noticing things and being observant and taking note of how much little things, there's a sunflower opening, how much joy that can bring. And while it's looking for the sun, and then the E was for exercise more. So little things like that. So it's not the actual word thrive, but I've attributed the letters to other little things to set me on the path. So that takes away some of that pressure. Quotes. I love finding a quote that'll summarize how I'm feeling. I also love looking at my family. My granddaughter, who's 5, has just learned to ride her bike without her training wheels. And that's just I know that's a thing that happens eventually, that they learn to, but to me that showing how she's thriving she started
mm,
school, she's riding a bike, she's thriving, she's making the opportunities. And I just love the fact that she's loving that she can do it now without anyone holding her and helping her. And the excitement that and the joy that she has imparts itself to all of us and takes us back to when we were, younger as well, and learning to ride a bike. So little things. So just opening the world up really, and bringing the world into the way that you look at your word of the year. That's how I like to look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that does make a lot of sense. And I was just thinking how we can learn from children to just
Mm.
keep that fun going because well, I'm almost 67 and can't ride a bike, but we
I,
will move on because I never
I,
had a bike
I
growing
did
up. So,
I did think of that as I was saying. I thought, no, Sue doesn't ride a bike.
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
I've ridden a stationary bike at
yeah,
the gym, so that's
yeah.
okay. We had
Okay.
tricycles, so I always had the trainers on.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's just the joy that the kids
yeah,
bring, and that that becomes infectious, and their attitude to just giving things a go
yeah,
without being
yeah.
inhibited, they just think they can do things and they go and do
And
it.
they go and do
Whereas
it.
we, as you get older, you
Mm.
start to become more risk averse and things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
you know, you don't want to try as many things and then you miss out on fun.
yeah, yeah.
So,
That's right.
we can take a leaf out of the kids' books. And it
Mm.
was actually talking about risk averse. I was listening to the radio when I was going to pick up my grandsons the other day from school, and they were saying that Australian parents are the most risk averse in the
Oh,
world. They
really?
hold they want to protect their children so
Mm.
much that it's holding them back.
Mm.
So, this helicopter
Yeah.
parenting and all of that. And I realize that it's a different world to what we grew up
Mm.
in. You
Mm.
could leave your front door unlocked and go to
Yeah.
sleep. It wouldn't matter. And the kids could go out and the parent,
Mm.
as long as you were home for dinner, that was sort of okay. It's a
Yeah.
different world. But the fact is that if we're not careful, we are going to be, you know,
Smothering.
mothering them, and they will then, stop trying to be curious and
Yeah.
wanting to, have that
Mm.
confidence in
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
look, before we go, I do ask this question of all my guests, and it relates to my blog and my philosophy and the whole point of the podcast. So, what does being a woman living well mean to you?
I think summarizing what I've said, I would be to take opportunities and make the most of those opportunities. Don't be scared to try something new. Um, you don't have to stick with it if it's not for you, but at least you've given it a go. And to become more self-aware and hopefully more self-confident as we age. And I really liked Maya Angelou's quote that my mission in life is to not merely survive, but to thrive. So yes, you
Mm,
can just roll along and survive, or you can push yourself a little bit and try and thrive. Yeah, that's
Well,
what I'm
that's a
aiming for.
perfect
Mm.
that's a perfect way to finish our conversation. So I want to thank you, Deb, for joining me today and talking about thriving. And here's to thriving in 2024 and beyond.
Thanks so much for having me, Sue. It's always great fun.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, it was lovely catching up with Debbie Harris from Deb's World and learning about her word of the year, thrive, and how we can thrive in life. I hope that you've enjoyed the episode and that you'll share it with a friend and take away some of those points that Deb raised, the good points and also the things that we should be avoiding so that we can all thrive in 2024. Well, that's it for another episode. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.